Good morning. I'm here with Greg Stewart. My name is Laura Johnston. On this edition of Maizex Moving, we're going to talk to Greg a little bit about his work with uniformity.
Right, so we've been spending maybe decades thinking about uniformity in corn stands. I think we have learned a few things over the years. We're quite clear now that spacing is nice, but uniformity of emergence and development is critical, right? And so we would suggest that most growers should spend more money and more time on trying to get their seed bed, their planting depth, and the timing of their emergence nearly perfect, and maybe worry a little bit less about spacing precision. The other thing that we've gone at over the last year has been planting depth. With again that idea of uniformity, if you planted at a different depth, can it have an impact on how uniform the stand is? Last year, I think, Laura, in our work, we noticed that when we planted a little bit deeper, so instead of 2 inches, 2.5, 2 3/4, maybe even 3 inches, there was a little bit of a delay in emergence, but we often saw that the stand was maybe a little more uniform plant to plant in terms of development, and that resulted in a bit of a yield bump. On 8 of our 11 sites, we had a little bit of a yield increase by planting a bit deeper. Now, last year was drier than this year. We're sort of waiting to see how our planting depth trials turn out in what has been a very challenging, damp year.
Thanks, Greg. We're here in Wallacestown at Little John Farm agronomy site. We've got some plots here on forced uniformity. Greg, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here and what that is?
You bet. So Laura, our next step in sort of evaluating uniformity is, well, you referred to it as forced uniformity. So in this plot, which was planted on May 27th, right? We came out and cut the plants off with scissors on June the 11th. Yes. Three leaf corn sort of idea. And I know what you're thinking is, wow, this has been a terrible spring. We barely got the corn planted. We're trying to get it out of the ground, and now Stuart has us coming out with scissors to cut it off. Well, the idea here is, can we force the plants to be more uniform if we, and in these plots, we actually cut them off with scissors. So these were cut off on June the 11th. Today is June the 19th. So 8 days ago, we cleaned these plants off at the ground with the idea of, can you sort of force the plants to sort of reset, and maybe some variability that existed in the stand, could you improve it by cutting them all off and having them all start over again? We're not really sure what the results are going to be, but it was interesting to try.
Do you think we can really change it by cutting them off if one plant emerged a day later?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Laura, and I think most people would agree that if it's a 2-leaf plant, it's a 2-leaf plant, and whether you cut it or not, it's going to stay that. And if the plant beside it was a 3-leaf plant, it's a 3-leaf plant whether you cut it or not. And I sort of get that concern. My argument on that point, Laura, is when you think about some of the timing of emergence work that we did, 1 day or 2 days delay in emergence, sometimes had some pretty significant impacts on yield. So we're trying to make fairly subtle changes to the plant stand, and so yeah, I would agree there's no way cutting them is going to change things by a week, but maybe we only need to change it by a day or two in terms of tightening up the uniformity to improve yield. So that's what we're looking at here, and it's a bit academic because we're clearly using scissors and no one's going to use scissors, but we have plots in all of these agronomy sites. We have about 10 of these across the province where we sprayed them with UAN as well to try to sort of do the same thing as the scissors as a burn off. And I don't know, is there any practical application to that? Maybe. If a grower had a field that was very non-uniform, I don't know, in your situations, Laura, what produces the most non-uniformity in a corn stand?
Maybe planting a bit shallower
right.
than you would have liked.
So traditionally, planting a bit shallower, going 10 days without rain, and now you've got some very non-uniform. So our hypothesis here is that maybe, if depending on how things work out, that you'd go in and spray that field off with UAN or something that would just burn the tissues off and have them sort of restart a little more uniformly. Will that work or not? I have a filing cabinet of stuff at home that hasn't worked, but we keep trying, right?
Thanks, Greg, for sharing that information. We've got 10 agronomy sites across the province, as well as over 30 planting depth trials. So we look forward to sharing that information with you on the website. Talk to your dealer or your territory manager or Greg. Thanks very much, and stay tuned for next edition of Maizex Moving.